My name is Dr. Robert Bullard. I direct the Bullard Center for Environmental and Climate Justice at Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas. The Bullard Center's theme for Black History Month this year is Land Loss, Just Compensation for Shiloh. We're focusing on black land loss this year because of the issue of Shiloh, which is in Elba, Alabama, in South Alabama, is losing land and losing wealth because of a highway that was built that's flooding this community. Land is precious, and land is wealth, and so we want to make sure that we highlight this issue and make it part of our Black History Month theme. Well, you know, our HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, have played a major role in addressing environmental justice and transportation issues. When I was director of the Environmental Justice Resource Center at Clark Atlanta University, we worked with a number of communities that were fighting highways and trying to get transit into communities. As a matter of fact, we wrote 2 books there, Just Transportation, Dismantling Race and Class Barriers to Mobility, and Highway Robbery, Transportation, Racism, New Routes to Equity. Our HBCU consortium, for example, has a major role in working on transportation issues and environmental issues in communities where our schools are located. We provide technical expertise, GIS mapping. We work with training communities on information dissemination. Our HBCUs have a major role in addressing many of the issues that impact our communities. And so we have to make sure that we train our students, we educate our faculty, and we build that community-university partnerships. That's what makes us strong and makes us ready for the future. When we talk about just compensation for Shiloh homeowners, land and property, in many cases, that was passed down from generation to generation, from grandmothers to great-grandmothers, that gave their children a leg up, a head start, not having to start from scratch or nothing, but that inheritance. And so anytime we're talking about this flooding, stealing that inheritance and breaking that bond, that historical bond of having something that was given to you, that was passed down to you. So it's not just property. This is their history. This is their legacy. And it's important to understand that the land and the property and the homes, that's community. That's community solidarity. And anytime you're talking about breaking that solidarity and forcing people out and flooding them out, that's criminal. And that's not the American way. We say we want to get justice for Shiloh. We want to get just compensation for the homeowners. And we want Alabama Department of Transportation to make those community homeowners whole. Not partially, but whole. Dr. Glenn Johnson, Angel Torres, and myself, we wrote a book in 2004 called Highway Robbery, Transportation, Racism, New Routes to Equity. And in that book, we looked at how roads and highways have destroyed communities and have stolen the wealth in terms of the equity in people's homes, businesses. And so highway robbery is real. And if I had to write a book today that dealt with this issue, I would put Elba, Alabama's Shiloh community on the cover. Highways construction and building of roads have a long history of destroying black communities. Highways don't always go in straight lines, and oftentimes they deviate and go around rich white communities, and they just mow straight through black communities, disregarding those history, disregarding the home ownerships, and disregarding the lives of communities. And so when we talk about this decades of destroying communities, damaged communities, stealing the wealth of homeowners, and creating instability, this is something that's not new, but it's still happening today. If we look at the construction of the interstate highway system in the 50s, that whole program under President Eisenhower was a legacy of just causing tremendous problems and disruptions from coast to coast. And so this is important that we know this history, we learn this history, and we not let history repeat itself today. If we look at why home ownership is important and how it has been the keystone for building black middle class wealth, Shiloh is one of those examples. Like my family in Elba, 10 years out of slavery, my great-grandmother and grandfather, Peter and Lucinda Hammonds, they were able to acquire 240 acres of timberland in Elba. And this is 1875. And that land is still in our family. Timber and trees from that land was able to send all five of my family, my siblings, to college. There was no Pell Grant student loans, anything like that. And my mother and father and grandmother were able to use that money to send us to school and to pay all kinds of bills and keep households without having to go outside for government for anything. And so land is wealth and land is freedom. And so Shiloh is a good example of residents who have inherited land from their grandparents, in some cases great-grandparents. That land has stayed in the family, survived slavery, Jim Crow segregation, and we will fight to make sure that Shiloh survives this onslaught of this highway and this flooding. I don't know if you've ever lived near a highway that floods. It's not something that you would be part of your dream. And having a highway that was elevated at the height of a rooftop, in Shiloh, in Elba, the land was flat. A lot of the land was farmland. In 2018, the Alabama Department of Transportation widened the US 84 highway, made it from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, elevated the highway about 15 feet, and turned the drains on the community, on Shiloh community, and the stormwater drains flooding the community, and when it rains, it becomes a lake, and ruining people's septic system. It's a rural area. And so when people's septic systems flood, the sewer back up in people's homes, we're talking about a nightmare instead of American dream. So it's important to understand that you're talking about more household expenses. In case of the land that's constantly flooding, you get subsidence, which is basically the land sinking. Homes are sinking. Foundations are cracked. Roofs are cracked. Leaky roofs end up getting moisture in the attics. Then you get mold growing in the attics, and the spores from the mold get into the ventilation system, and then it blows. People breathe it. They get sick. This is a real scenario of a tragedy in terms of how a highway has created a nightmare and has ruined the residents, the homeowners' American dream. In America, property owners have rights. They're guaranteed that no government entity can take their property. And eminent domain says that if government is to take property, then you're supposed to be justly compensated. This highway has come through this community in Shiloh. It has flooded the community. Alabama Department of Transportation built this highway, and the right-of-way comes almost, in some cases, 2 feet, in some cases 7 inches from the residents' homes. And the law says that the state is supposed to keep the water onto the right-of-way. Not a drop of water is supposed to come off that right-of-way, but that has not been the case. The community has been flooded, and what the community is saying, the residents and the homeowners are saying, is that this flooding has illegally taken their property, has basically kept them from using their property. And this illegal takings is basically causing them to suffer. And they have rights to sue, the rights to protest, and the right to get just compensation for the destruction and the damage that this flooding has caused. But they have not got any compensation. And what we're saying is that it's time for just compensation for the homeowners who have been damaged by this highway flooding, and that the Alabama Department of Transportation should pay those damages and pay those losses that the residents and the homeowners have incurred. The residents in Shiloh have been waiting for 6+ years to get justice from the highway flooding caused by Alabama DOT elevating the highway and turning the drains on them. 3 of the residents in Shiloh filed a Title VI civil rights complaint charging the Alabama Department of Transportation with discrimination. They filed that complaint in 2022. It took 2 years for that complaint to be resolved, and so the community was flooded 2 years while this complaint went through the investigation. The complaint was actually settled, and a voluntary resolution agreement was arrived at in October 24, which mandated the Alabama Department of Transportation to rectify the flooding with a drainage system that would supposedly stop the flooding. But they stopped short. The U.S. government stopped short of mandating or requiring the Alabama Department of Transportation to somehow compensate the homeowners for the damages, the losses that this flooding has caused. And so it was not a total victory. It's one thing to get the state to fix a highway it built that flooded the community, but to stop short of not somehow requiring the entity that created the flooding and created the damage, the community said that's not justice. And so what we're fighting for, working hard for, is just compensation for Shiloh. Not partial victory in terms of just fixing the highway, but fix the community, fix the homeowners, fix the property owners, make them whole. That's when we talk about justice. Land ownership and home ownership are keys to wealth accumulation in the middle class. That's true for all Americans. And if we look at this wealth gap between blacks and whites, the biggest factor in this wealth gap is lack of home ownership. And so when we talk about increasing black home ownership, increasing ownership of property, ownership of businesses, that's increasing wealth. So anytime you have a highway that floods, that's decreasing and depreciating the property values, the land values, that is land theft. That is highway robbery. And so it's important that we do not allow this theft of wealth through flooding or through the damaged homes and damaged property. That's important. Black middle class homeowners should not have to somehow suffer from flooding. And when their homes are damaged by a highway that was built by the Alabama Department of Transportation, then that state agency should compensate those homeowners and those property owners for the damage that it caused. That's why we say this Black History Month, just compensation for Shiloh community homeowners. There are a lot of things that people who are concerned about justice for Shiloh and just compensation for Shiloh can do. We have a GoFundMe campaign going on right now, and they can go to the GoFundMe website that features a fantastic award-winning documentary by ABC News on Shiloh that tells the history of how this community became to get flooded and what's been done to try to get justice. They can also get in touch with the Bullitt Center. We have lots of information on justice for Shiloh and just compensation. We are working with the Sierra Club that are working with the Bullitt Center, with the Shiloh community to get just compensation. We're talking about getting lawyers and other experts to work with us to assist and support, because it will take a team, a multidisciplinary team of lawyers, engineers, land planners, experts to fight this. And this is not something that we will give up on. The Bullitt Center is all in for just compensation for Shiloh.